In this video, we are talking about how to work with students and children who have the most significant behavioral needs and the most challenging behaviors. Some of the topics we're going to discuss are pathological demand avoidance and oppositional defiant disorder, and the strategies you can use to support these students. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel from the Behavior Check-In, and I'm a behavioral coach and teacher in Florida. I have a child with behavioral needs, and I have been working with students with behavioral needs for 10 years now. And today I'm going to share some of my strategies that I have used that I've found to be effective in supporting these students. So I have done a lot of research, and I've learned through experience, and I've learned through just supporting my own child that these students need a lot of support, and these can be the most challenging behaviors for parents and for teachers because they don't seem to know how to reach the child. It feels like everything that they're doing, the child just fights against and doesn't want to cooperate with. And that can leave you feeling very overwhelmed as a parent and as a teacher. And first and foremost, I just want to let you know you are not alone, that it is difficult working with these behaviors, but there is hope. And these children really at the heart, like any other child, they just want love and support and someone who understands them. And I think that's the most important thing to remember when you start working with children who have these needs and you're trying to support these needs and to bring forth interventions to help these children. Now, one thing that I think is very important to understand when you're working with children with significant behavioral needs is that you have to monitor yourself and you have to take care of yourself. Oftentimes when we land in these roles as caregivers and parents and teachers of children with these needs, we tend to get all encompassed in everything and lose ourselves, and then we become dysregulated, and at that point we are no help at all. So it is very important to make sure you have a strategy for your mental health and your self-care, because when you do these things, you are in a better place to help this child and to help this child co-regulate because you are regulated. One of the things that I do is I'm very strict about my self-care routines. I take care of myself in terms of finding outlets in exercise and nutrition. I make sure that I check in with my therapist and I monitor my mental health. Another thing that I do is I take supplements for my mental health, and I find this to be very beneficial. One product that I absolutely love is Magic Mind. I have been using Magic Mind for a while, and I'm very busy. I run around a lot and do a lot of things. I'm a teacher and a parent, and I tutor, and I do social media. So I have a lot on my plate, and I don't always like to consume a lot of caffeine because caffeine just exasperates my anxiety and just makes me extremely stressed out. And I'm always looking for other ways to kind of help support and boost my energy level without causing that anger and anxiety. And Magic Mind has been completely helpful with that. I love that it's just one of these like little shots, and it has some great benefits, and it has nootropics such as ashwagandha, which I love ashwagandha because it really does help support my anxiety levels and my mood, and it has lion's mane, which we know is very beneficial for focus and helping your mood. It also supports your immunity, which is really important because when you're stressed out, which happens a lot when you're working in these positions or you're parenting a child that has a lot of needs, you tend to wear your body down, and you need to be able to boost your immunity to support yourself. So I really do love Magic Mind. I love that it's just this little shot that I can keep in the fridge. I can shake it up and I can take it when I need that extra little boost of energy to help me get through my day. And I know I'm not gonna have a big crash, and I'm not gonna be full of anxiety. And that's what I love about it. If you're interested in Magic Mind, you can use my link below and go ahead and get it for yourself. I highly recommend it because once again, it is so important to have a way to take care of yourself and support your health and your mental health. They are all connected, and it'll help you be better regulated and able to support the children that you're working with. So alongside with that, I think it is important to make sure that you do have a therapist and someone you can talk to, because working with children with these behaviors, it can be really difficult. Sometimes they lash at you very aggressively, like verbally or physically, and that can be a lot, and you need to be able to have someone to talk to and vent and process these things with. And I think that's really important, to have your own support system built in. Find a community online. You can find a community with me, my Facebook group, my social media. I'm here to support you because I know how lonely and challenging it can be. Often, if you are a parent to these children, you feel extremely alone. A lot of people don't invite you to things because your child doesn't quite have a lot of friends, or they can cause problems when you're at these events. They can have meltdowns, and you just end up feeling very alone, and you don't have your support system. So if you can't find your support system out there in your community, know that you can reach out and find your support system in the internet. And I'm definitely here to support anybody who needs that, because I know what it feels like. But let's go ahead and move forward in some of the strategies that I have found have been really beneficial when working with children who have these needs. So I think the first thing is to understand that Rome was not built in a day, that this is going to take time, and you're really going to have to get to know this child and build a relationship with this child. If you are a parent to a child who has these needs, spending that extra quality time to focus in on their interests and do things that don't involve any kind of demand, it's just relationship building, is very beneficial, because that builds that trust with that child and they feel like they can trust you. If you are a teacher working with these students, the same thing applies. When I start my classroom and I'm working with my students, I spend the first 2 weeks just building relationships and just putting in the major, steps for the routine. I'm not putting any demand on them, anything that's stressful. We are just this is how our day is going to go. This is our structure, because structure and routine are very important. They make these children feel safe. But we aren't throwing anything that's heavy academic demand. I'm not asking you to do anything that's extremely stressful for you. We're just getting to know each other. We're playing games. We're relaxing. We're getting a feel for everything. And that's very important, because you're going to need that when things get hard. You're going to need that relationship so that child knows that they trust you and they can come to you for co-regulation. So what is co-regulation? That's basically, we can help calm each other's nervous systems by sharing our calm, not our chaos, as the saying goes. But it's really true. If you've ever been in a situation where you are really upset and you're around another person and they start becoming really upset, then you just become more and more angry and upset and overwhelmed. Whereas on the flip side, if you're in a situation where you become very upset and you go to someone and they're calm and they tell you everything's going to be okay and they give you a big hug and they let you know that you're loved, you are able to regulate yourself again. You are able to bring yourself down from that fight or flight to a place of safety. And that is what co-regulation is. And that is the biggest thing we need to be aware of that we're doing with these children, because we're inevitably going to have meltdowns. We're going to have resistance. That is part of it. But we need to be able to know what we need to do in these situations. Oftentimes people think they need to double down on the demand, because if they don't double down on the demand, the child's gonna win. And we need to get out of that mindset. It's not about that. It's not about doubling down. We're winning because we're the adult. It's about understanding what the child needs and allowing them to have a place to advocate for themselves, and then meeting them halfway. And sometimes in the beginning, it's not even halfway. It's like meeting them 10%. They give you even 10% of what you're asking, and then you slowly build up to what you need to do. For example, I was working with a child who was on the PDA profile of autism, and that meant that that child had a really strong need for autonomy, and when they felt like they had no autonomy, they would shut down and have meltdowns and just refuse to do anything and get extremely what was perceived as oppositional. And really it wasn't even oppositional, it was just they were going into fight or flight. And so many adults would just try to fight and impose their will on this child, and the more that they would do that, the more this child would resist and double down and get more angry, and it was not working. And everybody was frustrated. The child was frustrated, hated school, things were starting to lead to aggressive behaviors. The parents were frustrated because they didn't know what to do. The teachers were frustrated because they didn't know what to do. It was just a really overwhelming situation. And I came in and started working with this student, and the first thing that we did was really just build a relationship. Like I said, sat down and found out what this child liked to do. And we would start off with just little things like, okay, if you do this problem, this child loved to draw and talk about like dinosaurs and stuff. I would be like, okay, if you do this one problem, then I'll draw a picture of a dinosaur, which this kid loved. And we would do that. And then we kind of just slowly worked it up to like 2 problems and 3 problems and so on until we were able to help build the stamina of this child. And that was very helpful. We also offered a lot of choices because, like I said, this child wanted autonomy. That child needed autonomy to feel safe. So I would put out things and basically explain, yeah, we have to do work. We're at school and I have to do work. I'm going to get in big trouble, which, the kid liked me, so they didn't want me to get in trouble. I said, we have to do some work, but we can pick whatever work we want to do today. So you decide what we're going to pick. So they would pick it out and that's what we would do. So we would allow that autonomy. I'd also include in visual schedules so they knew when we were going to have a break coming up. So sometimes we started off just in the very beginning, only working for like 3 minutes, and then we would take a 5-minute break. And then slowly building it as the child developed more ability to do that. And it really does take time to do these things. And I think where people get frustrated is they're like, how am I going to do that in the school setting? I have other kids to teach, and I hear you. And I'm going to say something right now that is kind of difficult to say, but I recognize that the school setting right now is not always the most equitable for students who have these behavioral needs. And I think we're seeing a lot of pushback for a couple of reasons. Right now, we are really pushing things that are not necessarily developmentally appropriate. And a lot of these children who have these needs are developmentally less mature than a typical student. So these demands cause more fight or flight. So I think that definitely leads into it. And also we push things at extremely fast pace and cram a lot of information into the day, and these children just aren't ready for it. I was able to do it in my school because this is what I specialize in, and I run a specialized program where we have that flexibility to do this. It may not be possible in the child's least restrictive environment if it is a general education class with just an inclusion teacher. They may need to be in a specialized program or other alternatives, such as a homebound support program. I know some parents choose to homeschool, and I completely understand that, especially if it's taking time for your child to build up the ability to be in a school. You have to do what is best for your child if you're a parent. And if you are a school person, a teacher watching this, I think you need to advocate for that child to get what they need. And sometimes that is a smaller setting where you can have teachers and assistants who can break down things like I just talked about with that child to support them, and they can be more successful. I think education is definitely not one size fits all, and some students really, really need that. But I think it's also very important to remember that when they get to those situations, like if they're doing homebound, if they're in a self-contained classroom, that if you're working with that child, or even homeschool, if you're working with that child, you need to constantly be gently at their pace, of course, but you need to gradually be pushing them and weaning away so much one-on-one and kind of guiding them more towards independence and helping them do more. As I said, we started with 1 problem, then we worked up to 5. And then by the time I was done working with the student, I worked with the student over the course of 3 years. By the time we were up to that point, not only had we developed this child's resilience and confidence and ability, but the child was also more mature, and we got to the point where we could do 2 or 3 worksheets before we needed to do a break. But it was a slow process of working up to that level and supporting that child. And now this child is out with just inclusion supports and is doing great. Early in their educational career, that child needed those more intensive supports, but as they matured and they acquired those skills through the special education supports that they received and the therapy that they received, they were able to do more and more. And I think that is the most important thing to remember, is to slowly wean them off of that as they grow so that they aren't dependent on that. I have seen situations where parents or teachers have been afraid to gently challenge a child, and they've developed learned helplessness, and that is really hard to break. We want our children to have confidence in their abilities, and if you do everything for them, they're going to believe they can't do it themselves. So we need to keep that in mind. Another thing that I think is really important to do when you were working with children who have significant behavioral needs is getting everybody on board, and that means you need to have a plan. Now, I conduct a lot of plans. They're called functional behavior assessments, and I create behavior intervention plans for the students from those observations. And these are very important. When you start off working with a student who has these needs, you want to make sure you're understanding the why. Why are they having these behaviors? Because if you don't understand why they're doing it, then you're going to just be like throwing things into the wind and hoping that something just sticks and works. And that's very frustrating for you, and that's very frustrating for the child. And every behavior truly is communication. A child is trying to express a need in some way or form, and we need to figure out what that is. It's either an unmet need, or in some way it could be a need that they have, or a brain chemistry that we need to address, and we need to find the best way to support that. And so I do a functional behavior assessment, and how I do these functional behavior assessments is ideally you want 10 days of data, and you want to kind of see, I collect ABC data, and that is antecedent, behavior, and consequence, to kind of see what happens before, what happens when we have the behavior, and then what happens, what's the consequence after, what does the child do from that result, the outcome, does the child stop the behavior, does the behavior escalate, that sort of thing. So an example of an antecedent might be the teacher is teaching the class and they ask the student to get out their work, and the behavior might be the student throws themselves on the ground, and then the consequences is the teacher clears the entire room and the kid doesn't have to do any work. And if I notice over time that we have these ABC data, it always starts with a work demand. The behavior is always something that's big and gets the teacher distracted from teaching, and then the kid gets out of work. At the end, I can analyze that and say, I think this is a task avoiding behavior. And then I can start putting in strategies for task avoiding on what we can do to try to help that child get started with the work. And this could be things like breaking down the assignment, prepping the child ahead of time about the work that they have. There's a whole plethora of different things that you can do in these situations that would be tailored towards the child. And we can try those and then continue to take that ABC data and see what things work. And that is what I do when I'm conducting a functional behavior assessment, because then I take that information and I write a behavior intervention plan. And the behavior intervention plan is very much a how-to guide for the child. I feel like it's an instruction manual. It's like what we're going to do when we see these behaviors, how we're going to respond, how we're going to support the student to help teach the skills to replace those undesired behaviors that we're seeing, such as throwing ourselves on the ground. And it may be that things are just in baby steps. Maybe if we can get away from throwing ourselves to the ground or throwing a desk across the room and just get to, I don't want to do this, or putting their head down, that's a win. A win is a win. And I think oftentimes in behavior, we think that we want overnight success. But in the grand scheme of things, if I ask a child to pull out their book and they're throwing their book at me, and then over time, they're just putting their head down and not wanting to do work, we have made progress. So it's important to look at that. We can build off of the head down to something else later on, but we are moving away from the more intense, aggressive behavior. If you are interested in doing FBAs, I have some documents located in my Teachers Pay Teachers store, and you can use those to help you collect data and kind of see what are causing those behaviors. These are the documents that I use. I like to graph them. I am a visual person, so it's very helpful for me to see things visually. I just understand it better, but that's something that can help you. Then you can create a plan that is helpful for that child. Another thing is, after I have completed the FBA and the behavior plan, I always continue to take data, because that is the best way for us to see if an intervention is working. And it's really important to understand that in behavior, sometimes behaviors get worse before they get better. We call this an extinguishing burst in behavior. And sometimes children, if they were doing certain things that were maybe getting them out of work, they may double down, that kind of thing. But you can work on ways to kind of, and I like to say too, you can look at a plan while you're in it and maybe go, this isn't the best plan right now, we can tweak it. Don't be afraid to say that that's happening, but also give it enough time to ensure that it's working. Because if you start an intervention on a behavior and you're like, oh, I've been doing this for 2 days, it's not working, give it a little bit of time. Kids are smart and they want to see if you'll give up. And you see that a lot with really strong-willed children. But I think that's really important to look into, as well as making sure you're tracking that data. I also like to get the students involved in tracking their data. I do behavior charts with them, not in like a negative way, but more for them to kind of gauge where they're at so we can celebrate their wins. I think it's very important to celebrate their wins and give them a lot of that positive reinforcement and let them know that they are making progress. I think oftentimes people really focus on the negative, like, you didn't do your work today. Can we turn that around and look at, hey, you did do 2 problems today, which was more than you did yesterday, and I'm proud of you. Let's keep going on that track. Let's look at how our behavior chart's looking. You're going up in rank, you're going up in what you're doing, and I'm really proud of you. I think that's really important. I really like to celebrate with the kids. I think that that means a lot to them. And one of the things that I do with kids to motivate them in the beginning is I always do a preference assessment to find out the things that do motivate them. Because let's be honest, we all need to be motivated. There's a lot of things we wouldn't do if we didn't get something out of it. And it doesn't always have to be like a trinket or food. A lot of people get like hung up on things that have to cost money. It doesn't. Sometimes you'll be surprised. You've got kids who just want to sit and talk to you. The student I had that wanted me to draw pictures of dinosaurs, that was 100% free. They wanted that quality time. That's why they're having this non-pro-social behavior, is because maybe they are seeking that attention, that connection, and you can replace that need. And you can replace that unwanted behavior by giving them that positive attention for positive things, and showing them that, hey, when you do what you need to do and we're calm and we ask for things, then that's what we get. And they understand by cause and effect, and that can be very helpful as well. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully some of these things were helpful for you. This is just a broad overview. If you want more videos like this, I can go into much more detail on supports and strategies individually that might be beneficial in helping students, but I wanted to give you a starting point. And of course, there are more videos on my channel that you can follow that talk about different behavior strategies and things that work with students. And you can always leave your questions below. You can always reach out to me by email. I'm happy to support you. Actually getting ready to this summer, launching coaching businesses to support parents and teachers where you can sign up and we can do one-on-one virtual meetings and we can talk about your various situation and come up with strategies to support your child. Anything that support your child or your teaching. If that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to me and we can talk about setting those up. I'm still kind of filling out pricing for those, but it's something that I'm looking into doing this summer. As always, you can check out my Teachers Pay Teachers for free and paid resources to support you in your teaching and parenting journey. And check out all my other videos that I have, and I'll have more coming. If you are interested in Magic Mind, make sure you use the link below to save you some money on Magic Mind. It's a great product. I really love it. I know you will too. Thank you so much for coming to my channel, and I will catch you in the next one. Lightning strikes by my